If there's one person who is already fired up for next season, by all means, it is Stefon Diggs. The last time we saw him on the field, it was by himself, watching the Chiefs celebrating winning the AFC, heading to the Super Bowl, and the Bills headed home. Well, during Super Bowl week, we talked to Diggs, and he told us that moment will forever stay with him. And by all means, he's still thinking about the Super Bowl. Take a look at this tweet. I ain't gonna lie, I want a Super Bowl bad. And I need to tell you, this was this past Monday. So he is literally sitting at home, just mulling over, trying to get back to the Super Bowl. All right, let's welcome in our draft analyst, Jon Berger. Jon, we're going to talk about AFC East needs here at each team and maybe where they could find answers in the draft. So let's start with the Bills. Who do they need in the draft? What position do they need to target to help not only Josh Allen, but yes, Stefon Diggs make it to the Super Bowl?
Man, get your checkbook out. We're going to go spend some money, and this is going to be a blast. Now, of the 4 teams in the division, 3 of them got a lot of cap space. The Bills are not one of them. But let's dive in here and let's get busy and talk about it. In terms of the Bills, I think you start on both defending the run defensively as well as improving the run offensively. In both scenarios, you're 21st in the league running the football on the defensive side of the ball. You're 21st defending it. I think you start right there. So I think you need to add a running back, a premier running back, linebacker, and an edge rusher. You're also going to have to deal with your free agents that could potentially depart the team and impact what I just told you. But I think you look at Azeez Ojulari coming right out of the gate, the linebacker from Georgia. I think that's a safe pick. If for some reason they can't get him, I think they pivot immediately to Jalen Phillips, and then they work their way down the order. I think they also need a linebacker, but I think this is the best choice. I think they can get him. They're in a good spot. You need a disruptive defender that can come off the edge. He gives you a ton of flexibility in terms of both his speed and athleticism. He's a long kid that can get after the quarterback. And even if you don't get there, this is a league about creating pressure. So I think Ojulari is probably going to be their top target given where they're going to draft and given their cap situation. Then again, I think Jalen Phillips, if for some reason Ojulari is not available, which could be a scenario that plays out as the draft unpacks and it unfolds. I think another kid they could look at and pick up is Jalen Phillips. So I think in both those situations, I think you can walk away with a premier defender that helps you get pressure on the quarterback, helps you defend the run, and improves that defense automatically. I think the next thing is that you work your way down the draft. I think of Jabril Cox, the linebacker out of LSU. I think he could be an add in the 2nd or 3rd round. That would also make them a better defense. So I think that's what you're looking at. Ojulari, if they could get him. If not, they pivot to Phillips. They work their way down the draft. They pick up Jabril Cox, the linebacker out of LSU. And then hopefully they can get down in the late 2nd, early 3rd. Deontay Brown, the offensive lineman for Alabama, is sitting right there, and they can go grab him. If you can walk away with 3 of those 4, I think you've addressed a lot of the defensive side of the ball. Then you're going to have to figure out how to get your run game back on attack. Back in a situation that's better than 21st in the league. But I think this would be a great collection if they could execute what you see right here, at least 3 of the 4.
Jon, let's head to the Dolphins. So they got Tua last season. There is still, however, a big to be determined on him, but most likely not taking a quarterback. Now, according to Ryan Wilson's mock drafts, Tua could be reunited with a couple of former Alabama players. They do have 2 first-round picks. So what are the Dolphins' biggest needs when it comes to the draft?
This one's going to be fun. We're going to get a lot of offensive firepower, and there are a ton of kids in the draft, specifically at the wide receiver, that can really improve this team. I think you need a downfield threat that can stretch a defense. In terms of looking at their needs right now, they've got a ton of cap space, close to 35 to 40 million. I think they need a workhorse running back. They need a premier wide receiver that can stretch a defense, and then always you can pivot back, and depending on who's available in those spots, an offensive tackle or guard, interior offensive lineman. I think what the Dolphins do is they come right out of gate in that first pick, and they pick up Jamar Chase, the wide receiver for LSU, a big kid, can stretch a defense. He puts a lot of pressure on a defense because of both his speed and because of his size. He also gives you a lot of options in terms of flexibility. You can move him around. I think you're going to have to see a lot of double coverage on this kid because of his speed and athleticism, but he's also a big body kid, so he can work those short and intermediate routes. So he gives you, as an offensive coordinator, if I'm sitting in that chair, I really like this pick because of what I can do with him. It gives me a ton of flexibility. I know I can stretch the defense. I think the other thing that you can look at here, if they are successful in getting Chase, which I think they will, I think you pivot right then over to Najee Harris, the running back out of Alabama. So think about this. Coming out of the first round, you could have Jamar Chase, the wide receiver for LSU, gives you that downfield threat. And then picking up Najee Harris, the running back from Alabama, that gives you that big every down workhorse back that could play in the league 5, maybe 7, maybe 8 years, depending on how much they use him in that ground attack. But you want to talk about two premier athletes on the offensive side of the ball that can turn the dial and make you better offensively very fast. It's those two guys, and I think they have a realistic shot at getting both of them.
All right, let's go to the Patriots, and I think this is really interesting for them. So they're picking at 15, and honestly, they've got some pretty big holes to fill, not just a lot of defense, wide receiver. You're still trying to replace Gronk. So where do you go if you're the Patriots?
Where do you want to start on this one, Amanda? The good news is, that's kind of the bad news, right? The good news is you got a ton of money. I mean, the Patriots are looking somewhere between $60 and $70 million in cap space. At some point in time, you have to deal with the quarterback position. If Cam Newton and Jarrett Stidham aren't your long-term answer, this may be the spot to do it. But you also need some wide receivers. This in terms of their wide receiver group, they need a big upgrade there. They need another tight end. And then you talk about defensively across the board, they need more speed and athleticism. I think what they do is they turn their focus to J.C. Horn, the quarterback, the corner out of South Carolina. I mean, this is a kid that's going to be a difference maker defensively, and they need somebody out there on the edge to improve that defense. The defense across the board in all position groupings, I mean, that's the area that's the weakest point in the Patriots right now. So I think they come out of the gate immediately. I think they put their crosshairs on J.C. Horn. I think they go get him. And then I think, the next thing you could do is go pick up a wide receiver and Rondale Moore out of Purdue. So J.C. Horn, Rondale Moore. I mean, this is a kid at 5'9", 180. He's going to be coming out of that slot. He's very quick, very fast, good hands. You look at his position rank at number 4. This is a guy that's going to make you better offensively. And I think that's what the Patriots will do. I think they'll address their defense first, then they pivot over to wide receiver, then they pivot over to offensive tackle and guard. I think they'll do it in that order. And they've got a ton of money. So I think between coming out of the draft, if they draft well, they've got a lot of money to be able to go sign free agents, and I think you'll see them do that.
All right, finally, Jon, let's head to the Jets. Sometimes the worse your season is, the more interesting your draft may be. So like the Dolphins, they also have 2 picks in the first round. They are picking 2nd overall. Do you keep Darnold? Do you get a quarterback? Do you trade down? Do you get somebody else? What do you do if you are the Jets, Jon Berger?
Well, you got close to $80 million in cap space, and that could change depending on how things unpack. But hey, look, when you're sitting there, I think you come right out of the gate and you go find your long-term quarterback. There's never going to be a better situation than right now to go do that. I think you then pivot over to the wide receiver and corner position, and I don't think you ever can make a mistake if you're the Jets addressing the edge and the linebacker position. So I think that's what you're going to see them do. I think worst case scenario, they go right after Zach Wilson. I think they can pick him up if for some reason the draft gets a little bit crazy and trades start happening and different teams start moving up and this projected draft order changes. That could get a little funky, but I don't think it will. I think they get Zach Wilson. Worst case scenario, they could pick up a Mac Jones. I think in either case, that's perfect. And then I think you still have enough powder to go out there and get defenders and Ronnie Perkins, Joseph Asai, and Dylan Moses. So this is a very exciting time if you're the Jets. But I think that's what they're looking at. I think Zach Wilson's probably their guy. I mean, he's a guy that you look at him and he could be a 10-year veteran quarterback. I think he could win you a lot of games. He's got the arm that you want to see in an NFL quarterback. He's got the mobility, he's got the size, he's got the intelligence, and he's got the football smart. Assuming he goes into the combine and nothing comes out of there that surprises anybody, I think that's where they go. I think they go Zach Wilson. I think worst case scenario, if something happens, they can pick up Mac Jones. I think also Ronnie Perkins on the defensive side of the ball and Joseph Asai. I think both those guys are achievable, and that would be a real coup for the Jets. If somehow you could orchestrate a way to get both those guys, depending on where you're going to line yourself up in the draft and the trades you're going to make, I think both those guys would be available for them to possibly get. And then I think Dylan Moses, the linebacker out of Alabama. This is a very exciting time. If you're the Jets, you got a ton of money. You're sitting in a great situation in the draft. You can get your quarterback of the future. You could also improve your defensively dramatically. They've got the draft capital. They've got the cap space. They can go into free agency and spend a bunch of money. I think this team's going to get better fast.
Jon, it has been a minute since anybody has said it is a very exciting time to be the Jets. Thank you so much for joining us here on HQ. Well, Jon and our very own Ryan Wilson in agreement there when it comes to the Jets taking a quarterback. Taking a look at Ryan Wilson's latest mock draft, he does have BYU quarterback Zach Wilson going number 2 overall to the Jets. We'll have to wait and see if that's how it turns out. By the way, you can check out Ryan's latest mock draft on CBSSports.com. Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.